Thank you, Robin. As the chair of a local continuum of care board, the local continuum of care being the Homeless Leadership Coalition. Thank you for joining our March general membership meeting. Today we're kind of give some updates about things that we're involved in the community. Many of you who are also involved in things that we're doing. Share kind of an overview of some of the things that we're hearing around like federal funding, and hope to kind of have a discussion if there are things that you guys are hearing as well that you want to share, or updates that you have for your programs. And then we're going to talk about myself and one of my colleagues just went with a few of our members of the Youth Action Board to DC to speak with our legislators last week. I'm a little jet lagged, so if I stumble on my words today, that's why. We were gone until late on Saturday, and have just kind of jumped back in. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, and then, yeah, just leave time for some discussions on things like strategic planning as well. So go ahead and go to the next slide. Great. So to kind of start, we're going to talk about our strategic planning update. John, if you want to help me out with this. We just met with the folks who are doing our strategic plan with ourselves, myself and John, and a bunch of other folks that are involved.
Yeah. So we are working, and we are the HLC, specifically the HLC board. We are responsible under HUD requirements to provide a 10-year strategic plan regarding homelessness, which we are in the process of. Basically, we're at the start of it. So that a group that COIC contracted with to lead the effort. They're called Oregon Solutions. They're a government program. Basically, they specialize in building consensus and building collaboration among stakeholders to complete a project. In this case, the specific project is the creation of a long-term strategic plan regarding homelessness. Now, typically that is a very general undertaking. We're hoping to do something more specific. We're hoping to have 2 phases to the plan, a shorter term, maybe about 3 years. That's more of a specific action plan. And then a longer term recommendations that by necessity really have to be more general, because we know that the landscape is going to keep changing over time. It's going to be really volatile as we go forward. So anyway, we decided that the best way to approach this is to ask Oregon Solutions to conduct a discovery phase before we actually started trying to create the plan itself. And so as part of the discovery phase, they procured a list of 30 interviewees from Central Oregon. These would be stakeholders. These would be service providers, government agencies, businesses, anyone potentially affected by homelessness in the Central Oregon region. And they asked them a series of questions that basically centered on what are the challenges, what is working right now, what is not working, what absolutely needs to happen if we're going to make any progress. It's just very general questions so that they could identify the overall landscape. Now, Oregon Solutions is not an expert in homelessness. They're an expert in process. They're an expert in approaching the people who are the stakeholders and getting them to provide the info and getting them to basically formulate the plan. But their job is to basically moderate the creation of the plan. So taking their interviews, they provided a report to us, which they just presented to us about 2 or 3 hours ago. And they identified some key themes. And the key themes, basically, there were 5 of them. And they centered on, first, the overall impact of homelessness, and then the fact that it strains everybody affected on a broad level. And one, this has the effect, obviously, of making it a significant problem, but it also has the effect of making it difficult to resolve the problem. because everyone who's touched by it feels the strain of it in different ways. So it makes it hard to achieve coordination and it makes it hard to achieve consensus. So that's one of the challenges of the issue. Another theme that they developed in talking to everybody is that there are different vulnerabilities in homelessness. So people become homeless, obviously, for different reasons, and they have different levels of vulnerability depending on the reason that leads to their homelessness. So it goes everywhere from the person who just lost their job last week and needs time to find another one to the person who has been a chronic addict and has suffered mental health issues as a result and has never really had their life grounded in normal society and is trying to exit homelessness on that basis, to people who have severe physical disabilities that make it very difficult for them to function in society. So all of those things are part of the themes that they're developing. They also identified that there are going to be core sets of resolutions and core sets of services that need to be successful in order for us to address homelessness. So a part of the plan will be to identify exactly what are those core services, what are those core systems that we can't do without if we're going to make progress in resolving homelessness. And then another theme that they identified was that, excuse me one moment. So community engagement is going to be really, really important. Right now, community engagement, and this relates to the first theme of the strain, right? The strain prevents community engagement because it tends to separate those who are affected by homelessness instead of bringing them together in collaboration. So community engagement is going to be a key part of the plan, and there are going to be potential priorities based on data-driven information. And so we are, one of the challenges of data-driven information is that you have to centralize the data so that everybody's working with the same information. That is a challenge in this region. In our continuum, it consists of 3 counties. They all have different priorities. They all have different cultures. They all have different approaches to how they want to develop their particular areas. We have to centralize all of this into one plan, and it has to be something that we can take action on. It can't just be a theoretical concept or basically a general goal. We really want it to crystallize into specific actions. So I recognize that what I've just said almost sounds like a 101 version of homelessness, right? There are probably many people who are thinking, I already know all of this. And that part is true, but the key here is that one, there are many other things that are also true. And so to take action, we have to at least put onto paper in some tangible form what are the goals that we're going to start with, and then how do we achieve what may seem to be two opposite goals at the same time. We have to bring everybody together in consensus. At the same time, we have to sharpen our focus as to what we can actually do. So where does that leave us? So now we've got a discovery phase that has basically laid out the landscape of Central Oregon homelessness. And so the next will be to identify the next steps and to actually start to move forward to give specifics to these very general themes that we've identified. And also at the same time, we want to identify folks who have a strong enough passion for actually coming up with a workable plan that they want to be a part of this. And so that's part of the building consensus. That's part of our putting our arms around everybody and saying, you can be a part of this, but keeping in mind that we can't stay stuck in kind of general inclusion. We have to at some point sharpen focus toward action of an identifiable type. So there we go. What we're hoping is different about this is really the action part. There have been strategic plans before that have been very general, and they haven't landed on a shorter shorter term focus with actual steps moving forward as a result. Is that fair to say, Eliza? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, there we get a plan or we have, assessment of the local area and then it just kind of sits. And maybe we sometimes bring it up, but it's not action steps. And so I think having something that we can then use as like a roadmap of like, okay, this is a priority we've set. How do we bring the people to the table to move along and to really be able to update the community on what's been accomplished on a regular basis, and evaluate like, is this still a priority for the communities? Is this something that we still be working on? Something that was like really highlighted in the group that we just had today, about this is that we want to make sure that there are, as John said, like people from the different parts of the region who are providing information when they are doing the broader meetings and trying to build the plan, because we don't want it to be Ben centric or Deschutes County centric. We want it to be encompassing of the whole region because it is a regional plan, and understanding too that different communities have different needs, and those needs should, like what those goals should be set by the communities where they are going to take place. And so something we are hoping to share out, as long as folks um, agree to share out the discovery report. There wasn't anything private in the report, so I don't see why we couldn't link it in the next newsletter. And then kind of have some identified next steps. Another thing that we talked about in the meeting is um, trying to get the governor's designee. What is it called?
Designation.
Designation
Yeah.
for this plan. So what that would mean is that we would get some funding from the governor's office to do it. Um, all of the COCs in Oregon are required to have strategic plans that they work from, or I'm sorry, in the country are required to have strategic plans that they work from. But I think we are really wanting this plan to also encompass something that we talk about all the time of like, who's going to take lead on the efforts? Who's, kind of the organizational lead of the continuum, and that's something that we've talked about a lot with our partners in the last couple of months. So that's another thing that we want to make sure that we do in the plan, kind of identify different organizations roles, like the COC's role, the MAC group's role, the role of different groups.
Yeah. When we were first talking about the fact that we would have to do this plan, one of the big issues was what would be the scope of the plan? What would be the time scope of the plan? And that's why we did the discovery phase first before we actually committed to the plan, because we wanted to see what the discovery phase would reveal about a viable time frame, about an effective time frame. And we seem to have landed on 3 years as not being so far out that things will change so much that the plan will become obsolete. But on the other hand, 3 years seems like an appreciable amount of time in which to actually get something done. So I think that seemed to be the general consensus.
Yeah, if any of you participated in interviews, we just wanted to say thank you for your time. It was really clear that those who were interviewed, there were 30 participants, leaders in this realm of the work that we do, and very key themes. I mean, like it was very clear that you all know what you're doing, and that we're clear on what the issues are locally and the gaps. And so, and I have to say, like, it was a very broad representation. So everything from like youth homelessness and families and like those who are chronically homeless and like medical stuff. So I think that it was a good representation for like the discovery process. So thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? Okay, great. We just want to give you guys updates on this so you don't think, oh, well, what happened to that? You guys said you were going to do, a strategic plan. So we want to provide you guys updates when they come up. You can go to the next. Great.
Yeah, and one last thing on that, it's really worth reading the report because there's a lot of detail in there that we couldn't cover in the time we have here. And you'll read the report and you'll say, oh, okay, there are some specific details in here. So anyway, moving on. So the shelter committee, the shelter committee used to have two chairpersons, and they were uh, Tony Tony Mitchell and Rosie Laurie. Rosie has moved on from doing shelter work to doing community engagement work. Tony has retired, so we were left without chairs. I am the board liaison to the shelter committee, and what that means is I'm just responsible for reporting back to the HLC board what happens and being a conduit if there has to be any interaction between the HLC board and the shelter committee. But the chairs are the people responsible for guiding and setting the agendas and setting the content of the work. So we held an electronic election, and our new shelter committee co-chairs are Todd Rundle of Neighbor Impact, and he is over at the Stepping Stone Shelter in Bend, and Jean Raybeck, who's the assistant director at the Madras Shelter. And I see Jean is here. I don't know if Todd is here or not.
You
Jean,
almost got my name right, John.
I'm sorry, Jean. What did I mess up?
I know it's a weird last name. The H is silent, it's Robic.
Ah, okay.
But you were close. You were
All
very
right.
close.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Do you want to introduce yourself or say a few words on?
Well, I think I know most everybody. Thank you for trusting me to do this. I really appreciate it. I especially appreciate the opportunity to represent the north end of our continuum. I think it's important. And like Eliza was saying earlier, so that we're not just all Bend centric or Aldershot County centric. I think, and if we can pull in somebody from Crook County eventually too, that would be great too, to do it that way. So I appreciate that. And we're starting to take some kind of baby steps doing an agenda for next time. So yeah, I'm very excited about this, and this is the committee that's near and dear to my heart out of all of them. So thank you very much for trusting me.
Okay, well, thank you for being willing to take this on. It's an important committee. It can have some really tangible impact on how shelter work is done in the region. It gives everybody who has a stake in shelter who wants to be on the committee a chance to get together and talk. Really, we talk about a lot of the nuts and bolts of running shelters and how we can run shelters better and how we can also coordinate and eliminate gaps between shelters in the region. So it is a really significant committee and an active committee. I would also say if you're not on the committee and you're interested in being on the committee, you could contact Todd or Jean. Jean, could you put your email in the chat?
Yeah,
And
for sure, I'll do that. Yeah.
and I guess
I think
Todd's
this
not
is
here. Yeah.
I just think the communication
Mhm.
between all the resources in Central Oregon is so vital. And that's why I really love this committee, because we're all in the same business. We may do it a different way, but we're all in the same business. And so um, this, like I said, this committee is near and dear to me. But I'll put in my email and my cell phone number for y'all.
Great. Thank you,
Okay.
Jean.
All right. I think that covers the shelter committee. Oh, and then one other event. So last Tuesday, February 25th, the Understanding Homelessness in Central Oregon Forum took place at Westside Church. There were several phases to the program. One phase was Tammy Bainey, who is the director of COIC. She gave a data overview. She presented pit count numbers from past years. The pit count numbers from 2025, I do not believe are available yet, but basically gave the picture of unsheltered homelessness in Central Oregon and youth homelessness in Central Oregon as two of the significant issues that we face. Then there was a interview of a young man who had gone through the safe parking program and then eventually gone to another program and then returned to be a peer support specialist at the safe parking program. And he shared his story. And it was a very, very compelling story, and it had a lot of elements in it that are identifiable to a lot of the people that we work with. Then there was a panel, and there were 7 or 8 of us on the panel that just answered a lot of general questions. A lot of the questions were concerned about unsheltered homeless individuals and where they're going to go. For example, if they're camping and they have to be moved from their camps, how are we possibly going to accommodate all of these folks? So there are questions about that. There are questions about how law enforcement interacts with people and whether, what is effective and what is not effective in that regard. There were just questions about trying to understand the effect of being homeless on an individual, and how that gives individuals a different perspective. What I took away, and I know there are other people here, Hassani was on the panel, I see that he's here, and there are other people here who were there as well. What I took away, I was actually grateful. There had been some concern about what the atmosphere would be. I found it to be one of teachability. I found that the audience seemed very open and receptive to what the panelists had to share, and I was grateful for that. If there's anyone else who wants to talk about the experiences they saw, feel free to chime in.
We'll be comfortable with the silence as we No, I'm kidding. I was really bummed I missed it, but I heard
Yeah.
really positive things about the event. I had several people reach out to me and just say that it was really great, and that the panel did really well. I'm super proud to hear Hassani did so well. I knew you would, but yeah, I heard really positive things. There was also for programs came and had tables, right?
Yeah.
You already
So
say that, sorry.
yeah, and that was a really positive interaction as well. For about an hour, there were a good number of service providers, probably 20, in the proximity of 20 service providers who had tables set up for about an hour before the program actually started. And what I found interesting was there was a lot of interest in the continuum of care chart. So a shout out to James Cook and all the others who worked on that. They found it really helpful to see all of the different services at different levels that could be available in Central Oregon. And they found it really informational and helpful to giving them a picture of what we do here in the region.
That's great.
Yeah.
I know a lot of work went into the event, and I was really happy to hear that it went so well. Sometimes when you're inviting the public to stuff, you don't know how folks will come and show up in that space, but I'm really glad that it was positive. Great. So next slide. I did want to talk about, like, I know it's for some of us, especially if we receive federal funding, it's been kind of a stressful last couple weeks. And I wanted to provide some updates about things that I've heard and know of that are affecting the COC directly, and COC funds. So the HLC um, we received 2 different grants from HUD, and how that's kind of affecting the work that we're doing right now so far, and what we've heard. And then I also wanted to give an opportunity for people to share things that maybe they're experiencing or things that they've heard or concerns that they have as well. Just because I know that, over the years this group has really supported each other in things and provided information to each other. And I think that we're always stronger together when we do that. So in the last week or so, as I said, we get 2 different grants from HUD. One being our COC, regular competition grant that funds a bunch of different housing programs locally. So it's just under $900,000 a year that funds, permanent supportive housing for youth, permanent supportive housing for adults, families, as well as like some rapid rehousing programs for survivors of trafficking, a couple different other programs. And so we have that grant, as well as the newest grant, which you guys have all heard about, YHDP, so the Youth Homeless Demonstration Program grant. That is a 2-year grant to start off, and the region received $953,000 for 2 years to provide housing to youth, and then it will roll into our normal competition amounts as a yearly basis. So we'll receive half that amount every year ongoing, was what we thought. And we recently were made aware that HUD canceled all of their technical assistance contracts, all but 2. So there are 2 firms that still have contracts with HUD to provide technical assistance. One of them is a youth technical assistance. They provide technical assistance to youth advisory boards across the country, and they do some other stuff for different grants for HUD. And then the other one, I think, is Youth Collaboratory as well. But the rest of our technical assistance providers that support the continuum of care, so the gentleman that we've been working with for many years that supports all the continuums in Oregon, that contract was ended. And then also our technical assistance provider that provides support, 8 different contracts were canceled across the country. So that's all we've kind of heard from HUD. I do know that there is, like in the proposed budget for next year, that right now is just sitting in Washington, it would be substantial funding cuts to HUD programs, and ours would not be immune to that. So we're just kind of, I did spend last week, we talked to our legislators about that when I was in DC with the Youth Advisory Board, just about how that would impact us locally. And I do know that one of our commissioners, county commissioners, is there in DC as well this week, talking to our legislators about it. Just for folks to know, that's kind of all we've really heard on that end. Aside from, I have heard some rumors about our HUD, our regional HUD folks being sent home. I know they were in Washington State. I don't know if the Oregon folks were sent home yet, but I heard that they were going to be. And I didn't know if, as far as like for JBRJ, we have a significant amount of federal funding, and of course it's a huge concern for us to be able to offer youth programming locally, because we really rely on that for a lot of our youth shelters and our other programs, street outreach programs. So we've just been doing a lot of advocating, but I don't know if others want to share if it's impacted you yet, or if you've heard anything. To this date, we've been able to still draw down funds for our grants, but we haven't really gotten other updates aside from those. Linda?
Yeah, so the city of Redmond, we just got called by our HUD rep today. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. We just got a call from our HUD rep today. He is anticipating his pink slip any day now, and all the West Coast offices are. So they anticipate, well, they haven't been told, the grants will be cut off or frozen. They anticipate not having the staff to process all the things. So if you are a grantee of ours for CDBG and you have reimbursements that you can send me this week, I would recommend doing that. We're moving ahead. Right now, we're in the middle of our application process for next year on kind of the capital projects, not the public service projects. But we're moving forward with that because we just don't know. And so we still have to meet timelines to get reports in until we're told otherwise. So yeah, if you're also planning to request funds from us and you have an application that you're looking at, still plan to send that in by the deadline next week. And we'll just kind of move forward day by day, week by week until we're told otherwise.
Great, thank you. Okay. I do know, so when we were in DC, we did hear about some resources for nonprofits who maybe are getting, different information from like our state partners versus our federal partners. And so we're going to try our best to provide information in the newsletters when we get resources. And I was talking to John about this earlier, but just encouraging nonprofits that if you are not sure like the best course of action for different things like funds or policies that what I've heard from our federal partners, what I've heard from legal advice is that you consult attorneys before changing programmatic things just because of laws not changing but their executive orders. So just making sure that you're not that you're seeking legal counsel before changing specific things. But we'll try to provide as many resources as that we have available to us as different things happen. Okay, next slide. Great. So myself, I'm sharing the pictures because we had a lot of fun and I wanted to show you guys. So last Monday, myself and Rosie and two of our, oh, I'm seeing a message in the chat. Hold on. OHCS is tracking federal actions that may affect our programs. At this point, none of our programs are affected, but you can see updates on which programs have federal funding and whether there are effects here. Thank you. That's really helpful. Yeah, I heard the same thing, Mel. So we went to DC on Monday, and we attended the National Network for Youth Conference in Hillday. We did get to meet with our senators and legislators, and as part of the conference, kind of got some guidance around federally funded nonprofits and some resources and people we should reach out to if we have concerns. And so, as I said, we're going to share that in the newsletter for April, and we will continue to do that. Yeah, so do you have anything you want to add, Rosie or Keita? I know you're here. I don't know if Anthony's on the call.
I think he's running the YAB meeting.
Oh.
I did want to mention that messaging from legislators was definitely like, please email them and contact them if there are effects on funding or if you're having issues with drawdowns. They want to know as soon as possible. And I know that like as soon as we got back, I got a follow-up email from Wyden's office asking like the local guy, I can't remember what his name was, but he's just saying like if anything comes up to like email them or stop in and chat with them so that they can keep Senator Wyden and other senators and representatives aware of what's going on in our area so that they can advocate for us. So that was a big message. We heard that from every one of the offices that we met with.
Yeah, they want to hear something. We sat in on a Senate committee hearing, and one of the senators that was there, Senator Klobuchar, was talking about real stories of how this is impacting Americans in her state. And that's something that all of the legislators and like senators asked for is like, if there are real stories of it's affecting this many youth or this many families or this many people in Central Oregon when this funding, they need to know that because all of them, all of the offices said, we need the data, we need to know because they feel the same way that we do, that there are so many changes happening so quickly and they want to advocate for the local area and their state. And so all of them said that. So just reach out, I guess, like, email them or reach out because they all want to know if there are people being impacted or what the issues of what's happening. Yeah. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Kita?
I mean, it was an interesting time to be in DC. I mean, not just in general, but recent government thing that just went out, the federal funding cut. So it was an interesting time to be there to advocate. I wish there was more that we could have said or done, more people we could have talked to. But yeah, I just see how well they advocate for us on our behalf as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it was a really heavy experience for sure, being there. But it was clear that everyone is, is wanting to advocate for the region. So I even told my physician, I went to a doctor's appointment yesterday. I even told my physician, if you have patients that are being impacted by this, email your representative. And she's like, that is good to know. So just like sharing that with folks, because really that's the most impactful thing to do. And it's really not, regardless of, your political, it really nothing to do with that. We're talking about people, people's lives, and everyone wants to know if they're being impacted negatively. So, yeah, you can go to the next slide. I did also want to, I did notice that I've gotten some emails about state, House bills or different things that are going on in the state legislators. And, like with so many things that are unknown in the federal government, like thinking about if there are House bills that us within our work are working on, like letting community partners know so that we can support, like for example, JBarJ, if there are things that, I know that Rick Russell, for example, is working on a bill, or went to Salem to testify about a bill. And myself, I couldn't be in Salem because I was in DC, but I testified on House Bill 3079 last week, which would provide more funding for homeless youth in the state. So if there are specific bills or things that you guys are working on, I just wanted to give time for people to share in this meeting. No? Okay, well, there's a lot going on in the spring session. So there may be some things that are going on that you guys would want to support. And so if this is something that we would never say, hey, as the HLC, because we do represent it's such broad, programs and things like that. We would not advocate on behalf of the COC without, consensus. But if there are things that you want your partners to know about, that are going on in the session, I would just encourage you to let each other know, just because of the federal funding concerns. All right, you can go to the next slide. All right. And so we missed the part about updates. So does anyone have any updates that they want to share, just generally, about their programs or new staff that you want to introduce to the group?
I'd just like to make a plug for the Community Engagement Committee. We are seeking any members, people who want to enthusiastically give ideas of how we can engage our community. I really do think it's going to be an important committee moving forward. And we're hoping to be really active, but we definitely need manpower or people power if we can get it. So if you're interested, please email me, and I'd love to see you at the next committee meeting.
I as well would like to plug our HLC Outreach Committee meeting. I'm still in need of a co-chair. So any person out there who does outreach and would like to help out an outreach committee, I would love to have your hand.
We did just have our board retreat a couple weeks ago and talked a lot about goals around community engagement. And it would be a really great, we really want to do more around engaging with the community and the public around, homelessness stuff. So if that is something that people are interested in, I highly recommend, asking your staff or your colleagues to join. Any other updates? Do you all feel as tired as me? Because I'm feeling so tired. Cool. Well, we can go to the next slide. It's okay. It's just it was supposed to be spring and then it like kind of snowed today. I'm gonna let you guys go early. Um, so like I said, we're gonna try to share some resources in our next newsletter. If you don't get our newsletter, please sign up on our website so you can receive it. Although you probably all do because you had the access to this meeting and you wouldn't be able to do that without our link, which comes in the newsletter. Our next general membership meeting will be April 1st at 3:30. And I'm gonna let you guys go early. But thank you guys for attending, and I'll see you guys next month.
Thanks, Liza.